Hey everyone, welcome back to another Shotball Devlog. This is the second devlog. I actually did all this stuff a couple days ago, but I kind of procrastinated on recording it, so here you have a test hub level that I set up, as well as the test level itself. Um, I'll get into the game first to show it off, and then I'll explain everything I've done so far. It's not much, but it gets some more of the core functionality in place. So, same thing as usual, you move around and you shoot. Here we are in the test hub. You'll notice there is a new tile right here. It's actually an object, but it's not got like a collision set up for the player because, well, I'll explain that later. Anyway, we're going to go into this little portal here. And we have a countdown, 3, 2, 1, go. And you can run around, shoot enemies. If you run into an enemy, it should reset the level, but it won't do the countdown again. And yeah, you don't have to worry about killing any of the enemies. In this case, all you need to do is get to the level goal. It's hard to see. I'll probably replace the sprite at some point, but it's supposed to be a little bit animated right here. Yeah, you can't really see it because the colors blend in too well, but these are all test sprites anyway. And when you hit the goal, and you'll notice that it's actually lit up now in the hub because I beat the level. And if I go back into it, I can just play the level again. And it all works as usual. Shoot enemies, move around, try not to get hit, and get to the goal. So yeah, basically, I've got a little bit of functionality set up now for multiple levels and hub worlds. It's pretty basic as is. I mean, it basically is just you've got this hub world here, you go into the level here, and I'm actually using transitions for this, the portal transfers, instead of collisions on the objects, because when the collisions were on the object, I noticed that it would have to be on the same layer as the player, but that would cause the player to sometimes render behind the portal, and I didn't really want that, so I just finangled around with the portals, and I got them working the way I want. Hopefully it doesn't cause too many problems. There's going to be a lot of these portals. There's got to be separate ones for entering and exiting the level, but it shouldn't be too bad. I've also got start goes into test hub and then test level goes back into test hub, but I think this is for if I try to quit though. Yeah, right now it's set to previous scene ends, but that was from when the portal had collision with the player and would end the scene after you collide with it. Now though, it's just got a couple of different states for when it's been activated or inactive. And the reason for this, in the hubs, the portals are inactive, and these will probably have a different sprite than the level goal portals will, but they're inactive when you haven't completed the level, and then when you've beaten the level, they'll be activated. But when it comes to the individual level portals, I want to have an inactive animation set up. Well, it's not really animated, but because I want to have some levels have a level goal where you have to like fetch some item or do something. The main one though is like defeat all enemies in the level or defeat a certain amount of enemies in the level. And I think one of the next things I want to do is make a second test level so I can test multiple levels in the hub world and just make sure all that's working, but also test it with having this condition where you need to defeat a certain amount of enemies or all enemies in the level and have that condition reset every time you die because you have to start over again. Um, I also at some point want to put checkpoints in. This wouldn't be next, but in the old version of Shotball, there were a couple of levels where I had a checkpoint that you would hit, and it was pretty jankily implemented there, but I think I can actually implement it better here because I know what I'm doing a bit more with these checkpoints. Kind of. But the way that the checkpoints work in this game, I think I can actually have them better implemented and actually like save what amount of the goal that you've accomplished up to that point in the level at the checkpoint, but that's for future. Anyway, next it's either going to be second test level with a defeat X amount of enemies goal attached to it to test if that works, or it's going to be setting up a main menu screen for when the game starts up. That is weird. I don't know why, but sometimes the animations get bugged out in here and become tiny. Let me just go into this real quick. If I do that, then the ball shows up normal. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, yeah, it's either that or I want to set up like a main menu screen and a file select screen just to have that set up too and make sure I can figure out and get that working. I'm not sure how I'd get like... I want to see if I can make it to where the player can click on menu items. I'm going to have to finagle around and maybe do some tutorials to figure that out. But if I can get a main menu set up, that would also be a good step. For this basic test version of the game. I just want to make effectively a vertical slice of what the full game would be like. So I want to have like a couple hub areas, each with maybe like 3 levels or so, just to like test it out and have each test level be a different mechanic or element of level testing. So I can have just a generic level get to the end. I can have a level with one type of condition and another type of condition. I can have a level that has like the booster pads that send you in a certain direction, or a level with the destructible blocks, or a level with like enemies that shoot at you or enemies that are invincible, and that sort of stuff. And just get a lot of the mechanics tested out. Because again, this is still testing the waters. I got to make sure I can actually do all the stuff that I want to do in this game first. And that also includes multiplayer. I want to try to put in this test version an element of multiplayer. And the way I'm thinking is up to 4 players. I don't know if I could actually do that, mainly because I don't know how I test that. On the old version of the game, of course, you could have 2 people on the same keyboard or using controllers. Here, I definitely have to get a hold of some controllers and have them hooked up to my computer just to be able to play multiplayer on it. But yeah, if I could get 4 player multiplayer, that would be pretty cool. And what I'm thinking is the multiplayer is separate from whether you're in versus mode or single player. So it won't really be a single player story mode. That's just the main game. You're running around the hub worlds, you go into levels, and you can do this with 1 to 4 players. If you have 4 players, all 4 players must reach the goal at the end of the level in order to win, basically. I'm not sure how I'd figure that out, but again, it would take a lot of testing, and that would be done in this test version to make sure it even works. But then there'd also be the versus mode, and basically you with your other players in the hub world would go into a special hub for versus mode, and there you would find different versions. Like you could have 1v1, you could have 3 person or 4 person versus, perhaps. You could have a 2v2 versus mode. Again, if I have 4 players, then there's a lot more options there. If I'm only able to get 2 players in multiplayer working based on how I'm testing it, then it would only be a 1v1 versus, or even like, well, nah, player versus enemy would basically just be the story mode. But yeah, and the other thing is I want to have arenas that unlock. And the way I'm thinking of it is, in the old version of Shotball, if you completed a certain list of levels, like if you complete this level, you unlock an arena in versus mode, or if you complete these specific levels, you unlock a level in an arena in versus mode. So you'd start out with only 6, but then you'd get a whole bunch more to work with. Here, instead of making it this weird obfuscated system where you kind of just have to beat all the levels to try and get all the arenas, instead there will be select levels that will have like a secret hidden in them, like some kind of secret collectible. And if you find the secret, it unlocks a corresponding arena in the versus mode. But not all levels will have this, because there won't be as many arenas as there will levels. If I were to say, hypothetically release this game for like $5 on Steam or the Nintendo eShop, then I'd want it to have like 50 levels, but 50 versus arenas would be a bit much, so maybe there'd only be like 20, 25 different versus arenas in it. Yeah, I think one of the main ways, because of how simple this game is and how basic its art style is, one of the ways I think I'd add more value to it is just in terms of content and the variety of like level mechanics there are and level themes that there are. So that way there's like plenty of stuff to do, and the game kind of shifts things up a bit. Even if the gameplay is pretty basic and straightforward, the different levels can have their own unique mechanics, and each world you go to can like introduce a couple new mechanics and some new criterias for levels. It still probably might not be the best thing in the world, but I want to try to add at least a decent amount of content if this pans out and I'm actually able to make a full game out of this. Anyway, got a bit off track there. Thanks for watching this Shotball Devlog, and I hope to see you in the next one.